Now, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Sebastian, and we are out and about looking for all the wonderful wild things that occur down here in this northeastern corner of South Africa. Now, this is a live safari. It is interactive, so we would love to hear from all of you. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on the YouTube chat should you want to get hold of us. Now, the plan is for this afternoon, I think Tara is going to go follow up on the Nkuhuma Pride from this morning with their tasty buffalo meal that they've got, which I'm sure by now is going to be smelling delicious. And we are going to try and see if we can't go and follow up on the legend that is Mvula and see where maybe he's gone. So it's a bit of a swapping of roles from this morning, but it should promise to be an entertaining afternoon. And with this bright weather that we've got and warm weather, I would imagine that maybe there might be the odd Ellie around too. There was quite a big herd that I saw in the distance this morning, and so I'm hoping that they're still around, and we'll have a little scratch. If we don't find much luck with Mvula, we'll head back to where I had those Ellies and see if we can't track them down. So that's the plan for this afternoon. Lots of promise, and well, we'll take anything else that comes our way. It's just nice to be out here today. It's a Friday afternoon, which means it's Feline Friday, and well, we celebrated in style this morning with Mvula and the Nkuhuma Pride, and so hopefully it shall carry on through into the afternoon. Now, while I make my way to where they left Mvula, let's go across to Tara and see what her plans are and whether or not she's gotten anywhere near the Nkuhuma Pride yet.
Oh, good afternoon everybody. Welcome on board on this beautiful day, and I believe it's quite a warm day, 28 degrees. My name's Tara. Joining me on camera this afternoon is Senzo, and it is wonderful to have you all on board on our live safari here at Djuma Game Reserve, and it'll be wonderful to hear from you. So if you do have any comments or questions, please do send them through to hashtag Safari Live or Facebook or even YouTube as well. So definitely great to hear from you. We are on Buffelshoek Hook Cut Line. Bless you, Senzo. We're on Buffelshoek Hook Cut Line. We've just found quite a beautiful bird in the sunlight just up ahead on the road. Let's see if we can actually get a nice view of him. There we go. So if anybody would like to send through what bird that is, say hashtag Safari Live or YouTube. Let me know if you know what bird this is. So, want to get your brains going this sunny afternoon. So we're going to carry on heading down towards where Tristan left the lions this morning, feeding on their buffalo feast. So if you are eating anything, I do suggest you might want to maybe turn away if we do get there and they link to us. So yes, it was quite an interesting sight this morning, I believe. So we're going to carry on and see what else we find along the way as we go. So we're going to call in, see how the lions are doing. We're not expecting them to have gone too far. I think they're going to have big full bellies by now. Probably going to be snoozing, but it's nice to check them out. And then we might have a little drive after we have seen how they're getting on. And then maybe come back a bit later when it's a bit cooler. So I think that's the plan. It would be nice to actually see if we could look around that area. Tristan might even come across the lion that we were tracking this morning. Now there was some tracks which confused me slightly. They looked a little bit like a very big male leopard, but they were about 120 mils in size, and on some of the tracks the toes were quite a distance from the back pad, which actually made it look more like a lion. It had qualities of a female lion track, so quite a rounded back pad, but then there was some other parts of the track that looked very male-like, which were quite straight on top. So it could potentially be a young male lion. I think Tristan has said that there is a male lion who's got quite small paws, or it could be the missing female from the Nkuhumas, because they said that there was 4 females rather than 5 at the carcass. But it's a little bit confusing because we're kind of going through our minds why a female would leave a kill. It is quite unusual. The kill, I have seen female do that very occasionally, where they've left a kill to go and kill something else and it ended up being about 1 kilometre away. Can't see why she would do that, but you never know. Maybe there was a lot of mouths to feed, the cubs It could be that she is in estrus, maybe she was looking for the males. It could be, apparently there was a small cub seen about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Maybe because they were quite small at that stage. I know you haven't seen it in a long while. Maybe she stashed it somewhere, and that's why you haven't seen it. It could have actually passed. There's so many possibilities. Otherwise it could be a young male, nomadic male that's passed through that nobody knows about. But unfortunately we did lose the tracks, and it was difficult to see where it went into the bush. We didn't have the tracks as it went into the bush, although we did have alarm calls from the Impala quite a bit later on, but we couldn't get a good direction of where those Impala were, so we weren't able to go in and have a look. But it might be that Tristan comes across the lion later on, because I think everyone else that saw tracks also called it a lion, but that's why it's kind of an art of tracking as well, because it's when you get this crossover of the species, then yeah, as I say, it can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but quite interesting. Oh, we got some answers. Ah, well done. Most people saying it was a Birchall's starling. Yes, it was. And that beautiful metallic colour, more blue than green. The glossy starling has the green as well. Oh, speaking of glossy, there was one just flew off there. And the yellow eye, whereas the Birchall's has the black eye and more of a blue colour. And it's actually the layers of keratin in the feathers that makes the metallic shine, so that it gets the layers in the feathers, and as I say, it's just the reflectiveness of the sunshine that just brings out that colour as metallic rather than just a normal colour. And of course we did find Mvula this morning, so it'd be great for Tristan to catch up with him. He wasn't scent marking or anything, which was quite interesting, because apparently he's not really holding a territory now, so that's obviously why he wasn't scent marking. But I wonder if he's going to come across Tingana, who is also in the west, so let's see if Tristan's managed to find any tracks for him.
Well, I found tracks, but I'm not sure. I know Tara said she had tracks for Tingana this morning as well, but there are tracks on Vuyatela access, and Seb says he might have spotted a track back here, so I'm just going back. Sorry, just more, Seb?
Yeah.
Because I know that Tingana has been walking around here with Tandi, so it is possible that they both have crossed over. Do you see it there? Oof, I can't see, Seb.
But that might be... Oh,
no, it's not. So it's tracks for wildebeest that Seb has seen, but the way that they were positioned looked like little paw prints. So the tracks for the leopard that we did find now have crossed just onto the left side of Vuyatela access. So what I want to do is quickly just loop around onto Triple M. I'll know straight away if those tracks are from today, because, well, they should be on top of most of the vehicle tracks if they are any good. And Triple M is such a busy road that if it's from Tingana last night, most of those tracks should be driven over. But if it's Mvula, well, we might just get lucky and find his tracks here somewhere. So that's the plan. I'll be surprised though if he hasn't crossed into towards One-Eyed Pan. It's a route that he likes to take. He likes to go from here, One-Eyed Pan, and then he comes around towards Sydney's Dam. So I'm just going to double check around One-Eyed Pan area. If there's nothing there, then I might come up and just check the Buffelshoek boundary and make sure he hasn't crossed northwards. So that's the plan now. At least there are tracks around. I'll have to ask Tara just now what she thinks as to whether those tracks, if she had tracks for Tingana up here. I found where the vehicles were following Mvula and where they came out of the bush. So he definitely came out. It's just whether or not which tracks are which, because it looked like there was a male's tracks that were walking up the road before the vehicles came out the bush, which I suppose could be Tingana's. So it might just be that we're on the wrong tracks at the moment. It's not the worst problem to have though, when you think that we're trying to track a leopard and you think it might be a different leopard. That's never the worst problem at all. Now there are some elephant tracks that are going across towards Sydney's Dam. which we'll have a little look for later. Alright, Seb, let's just go a little bit quicker around as we try and see what is happening on the other side. Always got to be a bit careful with Mvula because he likes to walk around in all these areas and he likes to go and lie up on varying termite mounds, and so he can sometimes do a lot of looping, which means that you've got to make 100% sure when you're tracking him that you're not just driving right past him as he's turned and come back. Which, let's just see this track here. Where was it? Nope, those aren't tracks to worry about. Those are all antelope, 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 antelope. Nope, none of those. It's amazing how an antelope track can sometimes have a little paw-ish look to it. It's sometimes just the way that the hooves land, and especially with things like an Impala, when you've got multiple different hooves next to each other, it almost gives this little dotted effect that can sometimes look like the toes of a leopard, and particularly when it's on the edge of a road, sometimes it's quite hard. Right, Seb, let's check here. So Peyton, you say Mvula and the Nkuhuma Pride is the perfect way to spend Feline Friday. Well, I agree, Peyton. There can't be very many better ways to spend it. I suppose we could have an afternoon like we did yesterday, which was pretty spectacular, when we had Tamba and Tundi and Tingana, as well as the Nkuhuma Pride, so that was quite spectacular, but I certainly won't why I said Little Mvula. That was completely the wrong word to use, and, well, very naughty. So, we'll carry on and just move on from that fact. But I'm always checking in this area because, unfortunately, with Triple M being so busy, you've got to make sure you check their edges. Riddle, you would like to know if any of the leopards out here suspected father is Mvula. Well, Riddle, I will tell you now in 2 seconds when I just quickly looked down the road because it looked like there was something on the road there. You see what I'm talking about, Seb? But it is just a bush.
Okay.
But it almost looked like something walking in the road. It gets me every time, that tree. But in terms of Mvula fathering cubs, at the moment we are probably not 100% sure, but I would say Quarantine could potentially be Mvula. It looks just like him, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if Quarantine was Mvula's offspring, which would mean Nkuhuma's probably got some genes from Mvula. Prior to that, Kuchava could potentially be Mvula offspring. I'm just trying to think who else would be around this area. Shavambalana could have been. There was also a debate there with whether or not it was Mvula or Jordan. I think it was at that stage. So he's got a one or two that are hanging around, and there were some younger males that distributed away from this area. Just trying to think of females who he... Oh, there's a Slender Mongoose on the road, which is just running away. No, don't run away. I wonder if we stop here, if it will just come back. I don't think so, though. I somehow feel like our Slender Mongoose is going to just disappear. Seb, let's see if we can maybe get it on that other road quickly. Just trying to think of the females that could have potentially been sired by Mvula. Quatile, she's no longer with us, so, and wasn't her either. That's it that I can think of. I'm probably thinking of some very obvious one. There it is, Seb. You see it? It's just on the edge of the road there.
Yeah.
So there's a Slender Mongoose. Now, this is not a mongoose we get to see very often. Oh, it's just trotted away down a hole. Oh, no, there it comes. And you can tell it's a Slender Mongoose, one, because of its build. It's a very slender, long, narrow mongoose. And then that little black tip to the tail, off it goes. This is probably the longest sighting I've had of a Slender Mongoose in a long time. They typically are very shy. They're not like the dwarf mongoose that come out and see what we are. These guys like to stay hidden. You can see, look, it's just sniffing around. What have you found? I love the way a Slender Mongoose runs as well. It almost bounces around, a little bit like a jackal runs, the same kind of bounce that they have. It always looks like they're having lots of fun in life. There we go. And around the corner and gone. So, unfortunately, there goes our Slender Mongoose. But other than that, I can't think of any. I'm sure some others can help me that are out there that know a lot more about the leopards, that maybe can remind me. I'm getting old these days, which means my mind is not what it used to be, and so I can't really remember everything that needs to be remembered. And so maybe some of you can give me a hand with cubs that Mvula has sighted. But I think those are them so far. I think Torchwood, that is now the I know an Mvula offspring. Who else could there be? It's always one of those questions when you're on the spot and you're trying to rack your brain that you can't think of them. It's a terrible thing to happen. No sign of Mvula going towards One-Eyed Pan. I'm just going to continue just a little bit further and see if I can't find anything. Now I believe Tara is slowly but surely creeping her way through the thickets, which means that she's on the track towards the Nkuhuma Pride, and I wonder what those lions are up to.
Welcome back, everybody, and we have just located some very sleepy cats, although they are actually more awake than what I gave them credit for. So there's a few vultures around. We've got some hooded vultures over to the right in the tree, waiting for the lions to move far enough away from the carcass that they're not going to be taken out themselves if they try and go and feed. Another vulture coming in. So the vultures that are circling are going to be watching out for the vultures in the tree. The buffalo is actually, it's quite open, even though they've got it into a bush. They are going to be watching. Yeah, there's a few more vultures up ahead as well. So this is going to be Vulture City. Probably by tomorrow. And they can be patient. They will wait. And they will wait for a few days if they have to get at that carcass. So we've got 1, 2, 3, still 4 lionesses. Trying to do a head count. Oh yes, and so the female that we're on now is the one with the wound, I believe. Now, I think some people were saying it looks slightly larger, and it's possible that she actually joined in the hunt and possibly just tore it a little bit more. Oh, look at that. Now, I believe they did have slightly bloody faces this morning, but obviously they've had a good wash. Yeah, definitely. Riedel, look at those tummies. Oh, we're going to have another little go at the buffalo. They are very happy cats now, I think. They were looking on the thin side, but now they do have a little bit of a belly on them. Not as big as what it can be. Yeah, I'm gonna go and have another go at that. I did, as the wind turned, I did have a bit of a whiff of it. Whoa, it was smelling a little bit ripe. Not sure I'd want to have a meat like that, but I'm not a lion, thankfully. But they will feed on this carcass for the next few days now. You can see Unfortunately, that is the easiest access where the soft tissue is, so it's around the anus. I believe they have eaten some around the throat as well. It looks like they might have opened up the stomach if that's where the cub is starting to feed from. Or maybe it's just wishful thinking. So we've got 5 cubs, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lionesses. So I think actually that's everybody, isn't it? So it sounds like everybody is here. So perhaps my tracks this morning were that of a male rather than the female. I'm just wondering, maybe if we pull forward a little bit we might be able to see the cub. Because it looks like they have opened up that belly a little bit more. I'm just going to turn the vehicle on. Sometimes just messing with the keys just warns the animals that something's about to happen, because sometimes if it's very quiet and then all of a sudden turn on, they can all get a bit of a jump. So yeah, everybody's happy. Good, good. Oh, another cub moving. Bless you. Oh, Picard, it is stinky. I say not as much as what it's going to get, but it is a little bit ripe because it is right out in the open. You can see they've tried to push it into a red bush willow by the looks of it. Yeah, they have opened the belly up. The cub is right inside. This is not for the faint-hearted, people. Hi, Roshni, asking how much the lions will actually consume, considering what's left of it. There's still quite a lot of meat on that buffalo, and they haven't really got to the good bits of meat yet. The leg meat and the haunches. But you can see that cub's almost climbed inside. And it's amazing, I have actually seen maggot-filled carcasses, and lions will still feed on that if they're hungry. And I think with the lack of buffalo around, I think these girls are going to strip this down. We were thinking that maybe the boys might come and find this this carcass, but there's no sign of the Birmingham boys as yet. I don't know if there was any calling last night. I certainly didn't hear any calling, but I was out for the count last night, so I think there could have been a whole pride calling around me and I would not have heard it. That's got to be pretty hot in there. Yeah. Pisces Bobby also warning the cub not to get lost in there. See, and you guys weren't up for hunting last night. It was that old lady, I think she must have initiated the hunt. Possibly on the trail of the buffalo, expecting it to be at the dam. Hence her climbing up onto the wall last night, very low to the wall, ears were flat, very much in stalk mode, ready to see if the buffalo were there. Let's say some of the younger members of the Pride decided no, they wanted a drink, and had the buffalo had been there, they would have destroyed any chance of them sneaking up on them. But as it was, it worked in their favour. The buffalo had moved on, and I think by about 8 o'clock, 8:30, that's when we heard the buffalo calls. Hard work, little one. think it must be. So on average, once they have their fill, look at the claws holding on and try and tear out a nice juicy piece from inside. Look at that. Trying to anchor itself. Chantel saying it looks like something out of a horror film. It does a little bit. So yeah, so they'll eat their fill and they'll digest that, and they'll while the carcass is still there, they'll refill a little bit and then digest a little bit more. At some stage they will go and find water again, just to even out all the salts that they've obviously taken in with the meal. But say for an adult lioness, it probably averages out for about 5 or 6 kilos of meat a day. But they can take in quite a few kilos in one sitting. I have heard for a big male lion they could take in 40 kilos of meat in one go, and as I say, those bellies just expand to quite a ridiculous size. As I say, the females do look like they've fed, but they're not looking like they're ridiculously big at this stage. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in this pride. So I think maybe 2 or 3 days, if that, this is going to last them. Hi Sammy. Sammy also asking where the male lions are. And yeah, it's possible that these girls didn't call, because if they didn't make any contact, the male lions, if they didn't hear the buffalo calling out, it's possible that they didn't hear them. Yes, like he's climbing right inside. So they will be eating the organs, they will eat the heart and the lungs. They don't tend to eat the intestine. But the liver and kidneys, things like that, are also on the menu. Oh, shame, look at the hooded vultures, just waiting patiently. I say, if the pride do move further away from the carcass, then they will try their luck. Especially when they're a lot more full and they really just can't be bothered to move. Then those vultures will come down. And you're also coming to have another feed. But typical cat, they don't like being dirty. Hi Francis from Israel, welcome on board, asking what's the reason why they wouldn't eat the intestine. It's usually full of vegetation, so it probably won't taste very nice. Oh, she's toileting. Oh, I'm very glad she's done it downwind. I'm very grateful for that. Because lion dung does not smell nice at all. I actually don't know what's worse, lion dung or carcass. Yeah. Oh, it is. I was actually looking at that, the dark patch between the legs, so it is the one that's got got the injury. Now, we think the injury came from a horn. But as I say, they are pretty robust, and as long as she keeps it clean, I think Tristan said he could see some scar tissue. I couldn't see too well because the sun was on the screen earlier. But she should heal. It didn't look too deep, apparently. I think it was a superficial wound. As I say, animals are pretty resilient. You'll be surprised at what they can go through. There we go. But I mean, she doesn't look particularly stiff. She doesn't look like she's really battling with it. Hi, Jacqueline. Asking if it's ever been known a lion to be stuck inside a carcass. Not to my knowledge. It's not something I have heard of. Oh. So I'm almost expecting this cub to go all the way in and have its head pop out the other side. Could you see his head? So he has got to that back end. Of course, that back bit is where the fillets are. That's the best bit. Yeah, I'm sure the cook could describe the smell in detail, Roshni. I say we are lucky that we are upwind, so it's not too bad at the moment. But over the next couple of days, ooh, it's going to be ripe. It's going to be very ripe. So we're going to keep our eyes, I think, on these lions for a little while before we head off for a little drive around. So let's see how Tristan's getting on with his leopard search this afternoon. Be lovely to find Mvula for you again. A little wave.
Well, unfortunately, I would have to break the law if I wanted to find Mvula, because his tracks cross into Simbambili. I found exactly where he went across, and so we're going to abandon that search. I checked all the way pretty much to the gate, and there's no tracks coming back, so we'll wait until a little later, and we'll go there around sunset, and maybe he's up and moving. I was speaking to Aubrey and Tax, who saw him earlier, and they were telling me that he was in full flight and moving all over the place, like Tingana was doing yesterday. So we'll just leave him for a little bit, and we'll go back a little later. So instead, now what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go and check the water holes on a warm afternoon. First, I'm going to pull off the road so I can say hello to Tax. Hello, fan, how are you? Hello, Tax, how's it going? Good. Hello, everyone. Cool. Where are you going to go? North? Yeah. Enjoy. I'll let you know if there's anything down that side. Cool, man. Cheers, guys. So we're just saying hello to everybody, because it's always good to be polite to your fellow safari guides and people that are out here, and just say, yeah, give them a sort of good greeting and make sure that they feel as though there's a lot of camaraderie out here, which there is. And we always get along so nicely with Tax and Aubrey. We're very lucky that we get to work with those two guys. They are so chilled, and they always allow us space in sightings, and they give us lots of time with the animals, and they never pressurize us in any way. So it's an absolute pleasure to work with the two of them, and that's why I always like to stop and say hello and just give it a little chat and see what their plans are. But they're going to head up towards Buffelshoek, so they said they'll let me know if they find anything up there. I wonder where little Shongile is, actually. Which Seb, and I was telling Seb that she's been a little elusive of late. We see flashes of her here and there, and it seems to always be with other leopards around. And then after that, she just kind of disappears. I think it's the moment she's in these blocks north of Weetela Access and the camp, which are really difficult blocks to find a leopard. It's not an easy place. And she hasn't been hanging around her usual haunts like Treehouse Dam or Twin Dams, where she used to lounge about out in the open. So it's making it a little tougher to find her, which is good. You know, she needs to be hidden. She needs to be taking it easy and flying under the radar a bit as she grows and gets bigger and more confident. And particularly with Thandi traversing this whole area with Tingana the last few days, pretty sure she would have been a little bit wary of Thandi more than Tingana, and that's going to have made her sort of hide low, and I would imagine she'll come out eventually again, which will be good. But I can tell you it is the most beautiful day out here today. It's wonderful weather. It's almost actually too warm for a jersey. I might take this off shortly. I'm actually not sure what the temperature is. I think this forecast was for 24 degrees. I think that's what it was for the day. Celsius. So I was out by 4, 28 and 83. Thank you, Chantal. That was very fast. So that's what I'm out by, unfortunately, but it is a very pleasant day nonetheless. Now, there's been some naughty elephants here by the looks of it. Why they would push this old dead tree onto the road is a little bit beyond me. You know what it could be is that they were just looking for certain plant types that could potentially be underneath a tree like that, growing underneath on the road, or next to the road, and so they just flip it over to be able to get to those roots and grasses that grow in those areas. Now, I must be honest, the area that we're in now, I've always wanted late afternoon to see either a leopard or a lion walking through this grass. It's just this white grass, and I think the contrast of maybe one of the big Birmingham boys with his black manes moving through here, or one of the big leopards with a glint in their eye of late afternoon sun, would be an absolutely beautiful place to see a lion or a leopard. And you imagine how well they must camouflage if they lie flat in there with their ears down when they're stalking. It actually surprises me that we don't see our lions spending more time in this area. I'm sure they have spent time here in months gone by, but I as yet haven't seen them, but I do want to. Hopefully one day I will. It looks like a perfect place for a sighting like that. Yesterday I got spoilt with the leopards at Chitwa, which is a place that I've always wanted to see the leopards walking around in. It's nice and open and pretty and beautiful there, so it's a good place to have seen them, and I'm glad I got to see them there. I remember actually once seeing a group of 4 cheetah on that cut line, and they were young cheetah. Was it 4 or 5? I actually forget now. It was one of the two, but it was 3 or 4 males and 1 females and 1 male. And they came in out of nowhere, and then they spent time, and I remember we had found them at night and no one knew who these 5 cheetah were and where they'd come from, and the next morning we were all very excited to try to see if we can find them again, because somebody bumped into them with a spotlight, and it's a negative sighting with the spotlight. We can't shine our lights on them. And so the next morning we went, and I was trying to track them, and we were on Gari Main, and they turned up Cheetah Cut Line, and I thought to myself, oh, there goes the cheetah. And as I was turning around, I just saw these 5 heads pop out from behind a termite mound, really in the same place that we saw Tingana and Thandi last night from a distance. And they got up and they just walked straight towards where we were, and we got onto the car, and they all then popped out right in front of us, and we had the most incredible sighting as they chased impalas over Chitwa open area. And it was just something to see those 5 chasing these impalas down towards the dam, and they eventually killed one at the dam, just on the sort of eastern side of the dam. It was really a very special sighting. I remember that day very clearly, and it was very cool to track cheetah on foot. It's not something we get to do that often. I'm just checking around to see. You never know. This is a road we don't drive very often, so it's always a one that's worth having a little look on and seeing, especially for Shongile and Hosana. They spent a lot of time in this particular area trying to sort of spend, well, because Karula used to spend a lot of time. This was the core of their territory, so you never know. Sometimes you've got to look out for them. I can see a squirrel over there. Seb, can you see a squirrel? See if we can get a little closer. I was joking around with Seb this morning because we had a squirrel that was super brave and ran underneath the car, and that squirrel is probably the bravest squirrel I've seen in a long time. But when you want to put them on camera, they won't sit still. As soon as you don't want to put them on camera, then they're all over the place. No, you see, now our squirrel has run away. It was, oh, there it is. Oh, he's disappeared into the thickets.
Is that there somewhere?
Somewhere in amongst the marula thickets, unfortunately, is now moved off and run into the the mess that is those two marula trees. It's amazing how agile they are. Now, I'm going to try and see if I can't carry on and see if I can find some things around the waterholes. While we do that, let's go back to Tara and the beautiful Nkuhuma Pride.
Welcome back, everybody. So the cub has made its way back to who I presume is Mum. So I'm just going to pull back a little bit so we can see. Do we want to have a look at her? Because she's got, I think it's the two cubs around her, and then the rest of them are over the other side. Hi James, good afternoon to you. James wanting to know, or wondering if Jackal will take advantage of the carcass. And they could possibly, if the lions move far enough away and the jackal comes across, the smell's going to start wafting out, and that could pull in hyenas, that could pull in jackal, all sorts of other nocturnal predators. So it depends on how close those lions are, how full their bellies are. The jackal might get a look in. So it's the same as the vultures if these lions move away from the carcass. But at the moment this female is close enough that it's going to deter the not going to take that risk. Because even though they're very wary if they're coming down into bush like this, because it's not that open, so they can't get away very easily, and especially if a number come down. So they'll be very wary about making sure the lions are far enough away. Are you gonna have a little go? Oh, look at that big belly. Can you hear it panting? So it's about 28 degrees, so on a full stomach, oh, that is going to be very hot. Bless you. So what they're dropping now is going to be very strong smelling, and it's going to be very dark in colour because of all the blood. They're going to be digesting that straight away from the breakfast this morning. And good afternoon to you, Jane. Jane wanting to know why these lions are not hostile, because we're close to their food. And they know we're no threat. I'd say that most of these, actually all these animals will be used to seeing vehicles throughout their life. You can see the cubs are growing up with the vehicles, and we're not trying to steal their meat. If I was to try and go and steal the meat, then that would be a different story. If I was to actually walk up to it, or even drive right up to it and start messing around with it, I think they would have something to say. But because they are used to vehicles being part of their everyday life, it's just one of those things. And because we're not threatening towards them, they just let us do our thing, as long as we don't interfere with them. Shame, they're getting so bothered by flies. Hi, Snazzy. Snazzy wanting to know why they're panting after they eat. And it is because the food obviously helps to stoke the furnace, and that's why warm-blooded animals have to eat to create energy, to increase the temperature of the body. So with the heat of what's going on in the digestive system, creating the heat, and combined with the 28 degrees from the sun, that it's going to be very hot being a lion this time of day. So it's all they can do is try and keep cool. So obviously panting, it does actually help to expel a lot of the temperature. In very hot temperatures I have seen animals actually licking their forearms, if you like, so that the air can circulate over the wet areas, and that helps to cool them down a bit. Especially kangaroos I've seen do that quite a lot. And obviously they live in very hot temperatures as well. Hi Robert. Robert asking, are predators successful in chasing lions away from the kill, especially scavengers, so hyenas for example? Now it's all to do with numbers. So if you have a large pride like this, it could be that the lions win out. If the hyenas bring quite a few other clan members and there's enough of them, it could potentially work in the hyena's favour. Now, even though there's quite a number of animals, it's only 4 adult females that are here. So actually having the Birmingham males, 5 adult females here. So actually having the Birmingham males here would obviously increase their chances of holding on to this carcass, but obviously then they'd have to give some meat over to the males for doing that as well. Especially with the young cubs that they have with them, they're not going to be able to defend the carcass. They would have to keep safe. So that would be another sort of stress for them. So yeah, I think they need to maybe hope that the hyenas don't catch wind of this. Although it was sounding like possibly they knew of the kill last night. Apparently the hyenas were heard calling in the same area, but I think it was the contact rather than the laugh that you get. So it's usually quite a high-pitched giggle. So yeah, so it really does depend on the numbers. Jackal, again, if you get a couple of them, they can just nip in and nip out, and that's usually what does happen. I have seen a single lion feeding on a carcass and just get irritated by the jackal, and they got irritated enough that they just obviously had enough to eat, and they went, you know what, you have it. But I have also seen a jackal get too close, and a female lion actually took one of the jackals out. So again, it really depends on each circumstance, and you know, if the bush is thick or not, if it's open area, if there's enough escape routes, things like that. So I thought I heard some movement behind me there. It's always good, even though they're nice and relaxed, it's always good just to keep a watch out, just in case something has changed. So I'm going to see if I can pull back a little bit more and just have a quick look at the lionesses over there. But they have gone flat now, so I'm thinking this could be quite a good time for us to move on out and have another drive around. Oh, are you seeing something? Who are you seeing? Aha! You're being a bit gruesome. Okay, Senza wants to go around the front of the carcass to have a look, so we can try that. So if you're not keen to have a look, then rather look away. But we'll see if we can just drive around and have a look at the front of the carcass. Hi Laurie, asking if the vultures will eat the intestines. Probably. At least the intestine lining, and that will rip open and then leave the undigested or partially digested matter inside the intestines. Okay. So yeah. So you might want to look away now if you don't want to see the front, because the skull is exposed. So yeah, you can see there's quite a lot of the neck area and the face. The face is also quite soft tissue, which is why they would have gone for that as well. There you go, you can see the grinding teeth of the buffalo. But he does look like an old boy. I do believe he was a Duggar boy, which is an old buffalo male who's broken away from the herd. He's past his prime and now no longer really able to keep up with the herd and prefers a much slower pace of life. There's the stomach. That's another organ they're not likely to eat, again for the same reason. They might eat the stomach lining, but certainly not what's inside. But to be honest, they've got nice meat there, so there's no point in eating the stomach. So I think we're going to cross over to Tristan, I believe, and find out how he's getting on with tracking the leopards.
Well, we've got a little bit sidetracked. We haven't quite reached Treehouse Dam yet, and that's because we've got big-eared, beautiful antelope that are in front of us, and they're having a little feed behind the bushes. You can see there goes one of the kudus off into the shade. It is quite warm to be out in the sun, so I'm not surprised that they're trying to seek a bit of shelter in the shadowy areas. But you can see they're just having a look around. It's often the case when we sit for long periods with antelope is that they do get a little bit nervous as to worry about maybe we're sitting with a predator. You'll see they'll watch us for long periods of time. They stop eating. They'll listen very carefully. Isn't that beautiful? There's something about kudu. I really like kudu. I don't know why. There we go. Yes. It's nice of her to stop for us as well, so that we can see them. Now, funny enough, we've seen a lot of female kudu recently, but not nearly as many males. I don't know why that is. Sometimes we go through phases where we mostly see males, but at the moment, it seems as though it's all the girls that are hanging about with their young ones. And you can see the pinks of the ears, and there's the light catches them. And you'll also notice that there's long hairs that are on the edges of the ears, and it almost forms little tunnels down towards the eardrum, and those hairs actually will be able to help with catching sound and channeling the sound deeper into the eardrum to help them hear better. So it is a good thing to have. And you can see the back end with the beautiful white stripes that come off their body. Very, very pretty animals. It's not doing the best impression of hiding, is it? The others seem to have got it down pat a lot better. I wonder what there is there though on the other side of the road that it's feeding off on. I can't see nicely what that tree is, because there is a guarri, but it's not feeding off the guarri. I think it might be a buffalo thorn that's growing in amongst the guarri tree that it'll feed off. They like buffalo thorns, and you'll find that there's a lot of different animals that actually do feed off the buffalo thorns, and there might also even be a knob thorn in there somewhere, which is another one of the kudu's favorite. I'm going to just try see if I can sneak forward so we can actually see which tree it is, because it'll be interesting to know. No, don't stop feeding. Okay, I'll stay here then. I don't want you to not have your lunch. I would feel very bad if we chased our kudu off its lunch. There we go, and now we can actually see you on the edge. It does look like a buffalo thorn that it is feeding off. Or not, maybe a knob thorn. Let me get my binoculars out. That's going to be the best way to see what we are dealing with. No, I can't see around that corner. It seems as though there's another one coming out. Seb, there's one right here. Well done. It's one of the big adult females. And the one that we saw further down the road looks like a youngster for these females that have already crossed. And they're coming out of the thickets now and starting to get out of those drainage sections and moving more towards open clearing areas. Although kudu spend most of their time in thickets, at night you will often find them a little bit more out and about, and they go out into the open. They'll head for water at this time, so I wouldn't be surprised if this grouping is heading down towards Treehouse Dam the same way that we are, and eventually they'll get there. They've got to go across here and then just straight over the road on the other side, and they'll be there. So we're going to do that instead, and we'll leave our kudu here. Maybe we'll catch up with them again at Treehouse Dam just now. I'm sure we will. I wonder what surprises there shall be at Treehouse Dam. I feel like been a while since we've had a really cool sighting there, so I'm hoping there'll be something nice. HKP, you're asking if I have any idea where Nkuhuma and Mr. Q are these days. Well, Quarantine is dominant around Cheetah Plains and Koro and into Torchwood. He was seen, the last I heard of him was probably about 4 to 5 days ago. No, it couldn't have been. It must have been Monday or Tuesday, one of those 2 days. He was mating with Nkanyeni around in Koro. So he's around, healthy, looking very good. I saw some video of him. He's looking big and strong and powerful as ever. And then Nkuhuma, I've seen quite a few updates about him. He's now dominant on Mala by the looks of things, because he's also been mating. So he is now referred to down there as the Senegal Bushmale. Why he would be called the Senegal Bushmale, I have no idea, but that is where he is. So if you want to follow him and see what he gets up to, Senegal Bushmale is what he's called. And Seb, you might just have to look to the left for a little bit, if you can. Thank you, Seb. And so he's called the Senegal Bushmale, and he's basically dominant there. Like I say, I've seen him on some kills, I've seen some updates that he's been mating, but he certainly doesn't come really up into the north anymore. He was seen very briefly a few months ago fighting with Quarantine apparently, and then disappeared back down into Mala. So that's where he is. Thank you very much, Seb.
My pleasure.
Snazzy, you're going to touch on a subject that sometimes gets my hairs on the back of my neck standing up and my blood boiling slightly, but we'll get into it anyway. You want to know if the animals that receive these identification names, like the leopards and the lions, whether or not those names stay throughout the Sabi sands, or is it just a safari live thing? Well, no, it's not a safari live thing. We have nothing to do with the naming, really. It's all the lodges in this area that will name the animals that we see. And typically, you would expect the animal to stay the same name because it is born in a certain area. Those guides that have helped to habituate it have gotten that its name from a certain reason. And so in my point of view, it's just a bit of respect to those that have already decided on something to keep it. Other people in this reserve do not feel the same, and they've just changed the name according to what they want it to be, which makes a lot of confusing and difficult situations because everyone gets a little confused as to which is which. And so there is a number of reserves that just name things what they think they should name it, rather than what the name was already, or identification it was already given. So let's not dwell on that too much, because we've got a beautiful herd of zebra in front of us, but it does, like I say, get my blood boil a little bit. This is a zebra herd that we've been seeing quite a lot. They've been hanging around Weetela Camp, and we've been seeing them around Treehouse Dam quite often. I'm looking to see if it isn't the herd with the injured stomach. It doesn't look like it. It looks like the herd that I had yesterday afternoon. But isn't it nice to have the two babies up on the mound with their moms, and those stripes looking so beautiful in this afternoon light? It almost looks as though they're vibrant as they're walking along. They look cleaner than normal today. Well, the little ones particularly, they're nice and bright and white. If you see the female that's actually on the mound, she's a little bit more dirty in coloration. So you see the baby on the back is more white in color, and then the female in front, she's got a little bit of a dusty look to her, and that's because she is dusty. Probably find that been rolling around plenty in the soil, and especially a reddish colored soil, and that's what's given that coat that more kind of red coloration. If you go to places like Naipans or those salt depressions that you get in Botswana, you'll find that the zebras there almost look like a grey colour, because they roll around in this very powdery grey sand, and so they take on a slightly different colour. And if you go into Tsavo National Park in East Africa, there's a very clay soil there. It's almost bright red, and the elephants and the zebras all take on this almost ochre colour to them, much like the backs of the impalas that we saw walking over just now as well. So it just shows you that there's a little bit of a difference between them, even though they are mostly the same species. There are a couple subspecies. If we think of the zebras in Mara, even though they're referred to as Birchall zebra, they are a subspecies actually, which is the Grant zebra. But they will take on different tones according to the substrates that they've been rolling around in. Now, once again, animals displaying the use of termite mounds. So we always look at termite. Look at the head of the one popping up at the back there. All of a sudden, there's a little head poking around the mound. Hello. So I was probably wondering what all this fuss is about. Is going to come quickly see what were we all talking about and what's this nonsense about us saying that they're dirty. There's a little head that comes around and just checks everything out. But I was saying once again that termites are contributing to what is going on. So not only, oopsie, is it toilet time?
No, scratching.
Scratching?
Yeah.
That's cool. Hey little one, have you found a perfect scratch post? Zebras are such entertaining creatures. We had that one the other day that was smiling. I saw a lot of you quite enjoyed our smiling zebra, and now we've got one that's got a little bit of an itchy backside. But back to our termites. I always say that everybody kind of sees termites in this bad light, and they damage wood and all these kind of things. We must remember that these termites that we're seeing here are not termites that damage wood. These are termites that feed off grass and leaf litter. They very seldom are going to go after wood. Last year they did feed off wood because there was just no grass for them to feed off. But these termites are vitally important to this area. Not only are they churning the soil around these mounds by excavating, bringing particles to the surface, they're also depositing a lot of compost via their feces that they put inside there, and they're planting the fungus that also breaks down inside there that causes a natural compost to form. So the plant material that grows there is always far more nutritious, and that helps out animals like this that are grazers, and particularly now in the winter months when they're battling to get as the nutrient-rich grass that they would get in the summer. Termite mounds become very important for them to feed off, and they'll feed around there and get that nutrients. And not only that, it also provides a perfect place to watch out for predators, so you can go up and check and see if there's anything around you. And for the predators, it's a perfect place to scout about. We saw the Nkuhuma Pride on a termite mound yesterday, and I'm sure I heard something about Tara having a bull on a mound this morning. So we know that leopards constantly use that. Oh, the little one's having another scratch there, Seb, by the looks of it. No, not quite. It looked as though it was about to turn around and have a full scratch, and it's just moved off slightly. It's the perfect height for scratching for zebras. So Eric, you say our zebras, well, the little zebra has his pajamas on and that it's not bedtime just yet. Well, I would have to agree, Eric. Imagine if this little zebra goes to bed now, it's going to be a handful during the night and going to keep mom awake, so it will get disciplined, I would imagine. Zebra moms can discipline their young ones quite often. They bite and a kick here and there. I've seen it sometimes with moms that get a little bit irritable with boisterous young zebras. They just bite them and nip them, and that just settles everybody down. So hopefully he won't be a child that will go to bed too early and then wake up in the middle of the night and cause havoc. But these two are already quite old now. They must be approaching a year old already, maybe a little bit older, so I'm sure they're well into the routine of what goes on. It does look like that female is pregnant, the one that is walking away. Very early stages. When a zebra is heavily pregnant, like the one at the back who's now going to come into shot. There she is. Now you can see, look at how her stomach is bulging and hanging. So she definitely has a young one inside, and I would imagine we'll see that young one being born probably around September, October, November, somewhere there. It's not quite full term just yet, but she is definitely a lot heavier than the other female. Riddle, you want to know if the various subspecies of zebra could potentially mate with each other. Well, I would imagine yes, that would be the case. If we took zebras from here and plonked them into the Masai Mara, I would imagine that those zebras would mate with these zebras. I don't think there would be too much of an issue, but at the end of the day, those things very seldom happen, and we'll have a situation where you'll end up with zebras trying to zebras are never really going to get there unless we do it. So it's better for the species if we don't do that. We don't then get a hybridized version, which could then lead to genetic deformities and potentially a snubbing out of the species. So better that we keep all the zebras together, but I would imagine that they would mate. Now I'm just going to move a little bit because our zebras are slightly obscured by some bushes and the sun is directly in my eyes, so I'm going to try and park in a little bit of a better spot before I blind myself completely. Because one thing that is important when you are a guide or driving these vehicles is your eyesight. Can't really do it without it, so try and keep that for as long as possible. There's another one having a good scratch on the back. Funny enough, my brother used to live on a game farm, which is here in South Africa. We have a lot of these kind of places, which is farm areas that used to farm livestock that have put wildlife on them, and the wildlife roam around. And he used to live on one of those, and there used to be zebras there, and they used to have washing lines and power lines that used to, or telephone lines that used to go through, and the zebras became such a nuisance because apparently they used to rub all over the telephone lines and the washing line, and they kept breaking it by rubbing through it. So they eventually had to get these big metal wraps that they had to put around the poles, and that was just to stop the zebras from rubbing too much and actually wearing through all of those things. It was quite entertaining to watch, and eventually those metal wraps were so shiny it almost looked like somebody was going and polishing them every single day. There you can see how their striped pattern, even here in these thickets, actually works quite well. They're blending in very well behind all of that. Tell me, you want to know if zebras sleep upright? Well, no, they don't sleep upright. You'll find what a zebra does when it really wants to sleep is it sits down or lies down like a horse would. So they either lie down with their head up, or they even lie completely flat. It's not uncommon if you go in the hot part of the day, you'll find zebras sometimes sitting in a shady area and all the young ones lying completely on their side. So it is not an uncommon thing to see them, but standing up, no, not really. They're not like the impalas that are ruminating animals that have the ability to regurgitate, and when they regurgitate, that causes the brain almost to go into a sort of shut-down phase. So impalas can stay standing and chew food, but they're actually almost semi-asleep, if you want to call it that. The brain just sort of goes a lot easier, and they don't actually having a bit of a rest. Whereas the zebras, because they don't have that ability, they're kind of watching all the time, and only when they want to sleep will they lie down and actually sit down. They're not going to sleep while they're standing up, because otherwise you're potentially going to have a problem if predators arrive. Right, well, our zebras are off and they are moving away, as are our impalas, but never fear, because Dr. Tara has managed to find impalas of her own.
Yeah, well, we did have the impala, but they've just gone behind the bush. So we do have some male Nyala as well. Oh, something just spooked them. There he goes. Actually, if I roll back a little bit, then we should be able to see him with the impala from behind the tree. So we have left the lions just for a short while, and we thought maybe we'd go and check out the Hyena Den and just see if Gwen is around with her two little bundles of trouble, which would be absolutely fantastic to catch up with. And then we'll head back to the lions and see if they move around a little bit more when it cools down. So that's the most common antelope on Sabi sands, or even the greater Kruger, or even in South Africa, I think. It's probably one of the most common. The impala. Shame, you can see that black M. Which gives them the nickname the McDonald's of the bush, because everything eats them, and there's one around every corner. Shame. I think that bull might, yeah, he's just coming out from behind the tree from where the impala. Look at the horns on him. I didn't realise how impressive his horns were, actually. And the second bull as well. There's some really impressive bulls here. I was hoping we might actually see them alongside the impala, so you can actually see the size difference, because the bulls are actually twice the size of the female impala. But unfortunately they've scuppered that plan. That's stunning. Very pretty. Cool. Okay, well, let's go and see how Gwen's doing. See if she's out and about. I know someone drove by there this morning and they weren't out, but they seem to like the shady side of the termite mound this time of day, so we'll see if we can catch up with them. So it was interesting to see Mvula this morning. That's a leopard that I saw many moons ago when I used to work here full time, and he used to be on the east side of the boundary, never used to cross over, so that was really quite something to see him crossing through. We caught up with him on Gallagher shortcut, and he went west across Albury's Road down towards Sandy Patch. But what's really interesting is, because I was getting the lowdown from Tristan after that drive, and he was saying that Mvula isn't holding territory. He's been sort of moved on by Tingana, who's the dominant male in the area now, and that was really interesting to me, because I was thinking he wasn't actually going along and marking his territory. So, someone, I missed who it was, but someone was asking how he became nomadic. So yes, he's been pushed out of Creedle. Hopefully I've got your name right, Creedle. Creedle. Perfect. So Creedle also asking how he became nomadic. So yeah, Tingana pushed him out, and it's at Gowrie Dam, and it looks like an oxpecker on the back of the little boy that's drinking, and it looks like the Egyptian geese on the water, I think. Difficult to see with the sun blinding me. But looking very peaceful. Now I believe this was quite a scene of animals yesterday, all sorts of animals around, but it's amazing how it changes from day to day. But it could be it could well be the reason. I understand Tingana actually did kill a female, and apparently she had mated with Mvula, and it could be that she had the scent of him in the area, and because she had been mating with Mvula. And I think a few people have been asking about that, and I think Tristan spoke about it this morning, and I fully agree with what he's saying actually about Mvula mating with her, having the scent on her, and if Tingana was being in that territorial mode, looking to make sure that he was asserting his dominance. And it sounds like when he caught up with her, he just jumped on her and broke her back. And that's, you know, she's so small, then of course that is going to happen. But I think, you know, it doesn't mean that he's going to go around eating leopards or killing leopards, leopard females. It sounds like it was a bit of a mistaken identity, but it sounds very plausible of a mistaken identity, because sometimes, as I say, if they're so focused on that, and especially if she smells very strongly of that, then it's going to make a lot of sense. So we're making our way just past Gowrie Dam onto the quarantine, and then we'll head up Gallagher shortcut, go and call in on the hyenas. We had, I think, one of Gwen's offspring from last year see us this morning. I believe Solo from 2015. Hi Richard, welcome on board this afternoon. Richard asking if we've had much rain. Now I believe they have had more rain than what they did last year, so it's not as bad a drought. I was talking to Pippa, who's one of the owners of Djuma Game Reserve, and she was saying that this is more like she remembers it before I was working here. So she thinks that perhaps when I was working here it was actually a lot wetter than usual. So this is more normal for this area, which was quite interesting to me. Oh, there's a little steenbok out. Two little steenbok. So we went from a medium-sized antelope, oh there it goes. That's the problem with steenbok, they do tend to run. especially with them being right out in the open like that, they can be quite vulnerable. There's a little male. And I think some people have been a bit worried about the cubs, Hosanna and Tamba being around Tingana, and we believe that he fathered those cubs. And if Karula's past is anything to go by, so Karula used to be the main female in this area, and she had 5 litters. Tandy, the female that we've been seeing mating with Tingana recently, was her first litter. Quarantine male, who I've just mentioned, was part of her 4th litter. He's got a territory down to the southeast of where we are. Then we have the 2 youngsters at the moment who are about a year old, Shingile, who's a little female, and Hosanna. I'm trying to make sure I'm saying it right. So he's also around. So they're about a year old, but they have been seen around the mating leopards. Now, we have seen Induna, who has also, it was her 2nd litter male. He stuck around until he was about 3 years old. He was interacting with who we believe was his father, Yambili Ordan, and he, we believe, was there around the same time when they were mating. So Karula and Yambili were mating. So he was in the same area. So it's a similar sort of situation with Tandy and Tingana, and Tamba, her son. Apparently he was in the same area. So it's quite possible that Tingana has actually met Tamba. So we believe Karula actually had introduced Yambili with the cubs, and I'm pretty certain that she would have done the same with Tingana with these cubs, and that's possibly why they are around Tingana as well, which is unusual leopard behaviour. You know, leopard males aren't supposed to be interacting with the cubs, but it's possible the density of leopard is so high in the Sabi sands that the males are actually having to almost be involved to protect the cubs from other males, because unfortunately if males take over a territory they can kill young cubs, but when they get to about a year old there's not really any point, because the females are going to be coming into estrus, and that's why males would kill. It's not senseless or mindless killing. There is a purpose for it, because the females will, if they keep the cubs when they're very young, you know, this sort of size, it'll be another 1.5 years at least before they're able to become in estrus and mate again, and by that time the males, they might have lost their hold on their territory. So instead they actually kill the young cubs. So in about 3 or 4 or 5 months time the females might become go into estrus again, and they might be ready to mate again to have the cubs from that male. So there is a reason behind it. The same thing happens with lions as well, because, as I say, territories just swap so often, so regularly, and obviously these males want to have the chance to actually have their offspring, and obviously make sure that they have a legacy that is left behind. So I know, as I say, a few people have been concerned, but to be honest, I do think that these cubs have probably met Tingana, and as I say, I think it's been mistaken identity with the female that he killed, but not. But I'm not concerned about him being or attacking them. And as I say, with the cubs being there, he's not chased them off. So yeah, that says to me, I think they've actually met him before. And it's sort of talking to other guides in the area, they've seen similar things with leopards in their area, so it's not just this particular part of the Sabi sands. The interaction with males seems to be happening all over the sands with certain individuals. But that's what's amazing. I mean, you know, if you read the books about animals, they've been written quite often from one group of animals in one area, and that's why it's so important to actually get this information out there, because it could be different, and it seems to be different for leopards in this area. It could be a behaviour that's just never been documented before, so that's why we've not really known about it before, because leopards are so elusive, so secretive. And now, especially when they've become used to vehicles being around, habituated to the vehicles, it does, you know, they don't really care about seeing vehicles and people, so they just carry on their normal lives, and we're able to actually keep up with them and actually see these little snapshots of their life, and we can start to understand a lot more than what I think we ever used to. And obviously using technology like the camera traps and the GPS collars and things like that, it just opens up our eyes even more. And even just speaking amongst ourselves, you know, I've really enjoyed spending the time with Taylor, Byron, Tristan, and actually getting their thoughts and hearing their experiences, because, you know, my snapshot is here, and also where I did my research on the leopards there, but, you know, they've got a wider knowledge of the other areas in the Sabi sands, you know, so it's just pulling in on what everybody else is saying to try and really understand more about this cat. And this is what is so special about Safari Live and these live safaris. You get to see all this unfold with us and actually learn what has never been documented before with us, which is very, very, very cool. So we're making our way up towards the Hyena Den now, and I think also we're seeing interesting things happening there that have never been documented. I think Tristan also has found something quite special for you this afternoon as well, so do enjoy that, and we'll hopefully have an update for you on the hyenas.
Well, we do have something special. We have a rather large grouping of elephants in my favourite spot on the reserve, and that is the Mulawati. They're all over the banks of the Mulawati, feeding and just really relishing the time in the shade on a warm afternoon. And what I'm really hoping for is that they're going to come down and they're going to head towards Twin Dams for a drink and a bit of play time in the water. This is a herd that I saw this morning. I thought they would have gone towards the dam, but it seems as they turned and came a little further south. Is there one behind us? No, there's one on top there. Don't worry, we'll get to that one later. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a gremlin-filled hollow, this, so we have to stay dead still to be able to show you these Ellies, which is absolutely fine because they're all around us at this stage, and it seems as though they're actually moving slowly but surely up and out the Mulawati, which will be fantastic for us, because if they do come out, then I won't have to worry so much about our signal. Now, this particular elephant has only got one tusk. Unfortunately, it seems as though its other tusk has broken off. You can see there that there's the tusk on the right hand side, but the left hand side, it's broken completely right up near the top of the lip there. There's no bulge, so to speak, and that means that that tusk will not grow anymore. So if the tusk was broken on the outside of that lip and the root is not damaged, then the tusk will continue to grow even though it's been broken. But when it breaks up in there, there gets a nerve damage and no longer will it come out. So that, unfortunately, is how this male will be for the rest of his life. But look at that, isn't that amazing? Isn't it nice to be underneath an elephant almost? We're a little bit lower than what the Ellies are here. Now, hopefully they're not going to worry about us too much being down here, but look at that. Isn't this cool? You can listen to them feeding. Wow. This is as special as it gets, and here comes a little bit of a larger bull coming through as well. Look at him, he's quite a big lad. Still not a fully grown massive bull, but he's definitely getting there. He's a nice big size. I did see quite a large bull in amongst them as well, but he's going to be a big boy when he's older. I would imagine he's probably now in his mid-20s to 30s, so you can imagine when he reaches 40, 50 years old, how big he's going to be. Look at that. Isn't this magical? You can hear them feeding as they're going. Such a special experience to be in amongst elephants like this. I've been waiting for a very long time to have a sighting of elephants in the Mulawati. I've unfortunately first time I've actually seen them in here properly, so I'm going to thoroughly enjoy my afternoon with them. I think I'll spend most of my time here because it sounds like there's not too many leopard tracks around. The guys have done most of the boundaries, so I think I'm going to spend my afternoon in the presence of the gentle giants. And this herd looks to be very relaxed. We came down in the sand, and often sand means that our engines rev slightly higher and it makes a bit of a noise. So it's always such a treat when the elephants don't react to that in any way and they come all around us. So we have them everywhere. Look at that little bit of light catching his eye. Hello, boy. Oh. So from big, gentle giants to small, cute and fluffy, I believe Tara's got the little hyena cubs.
We do indeed. It's little Ntima. And she was looking over the log as we came in. I haven't seen Gwen, who we saw with the two cubs, but we are going to try and drive around the back of the Hyena Den, see if she's on the other side. I'm hearing something moving in the bushes just to the right of Ntima, so I'll keep my eyes peeled, but I think it could be Franklin. Oh, it is a Franklin, I see it now. And little Ntima is not bothered about them at all. Are we able to have a look at the bird just at the top there, who's singing his little heart out? What bird is calling? Who sung it? Hashtag Safari Live. YouTube. Who is singing? Telling us to work harder. Work harder, work harder. Oh, elephants are doing something interesting.
Well, bumping onto each other. There's Ellies all over the place. This is a really nice big herd and we're having the most wonderful time with them. They're all kind of spread out, and these two little ones that are going behind us seem to be the naughtiest of the group. They, like I say, have been jumping on top of one another. There's been lots of playing and pushing and shoving, which is the best time to be with elephants because I love when they spend their time doing that. It always is highly entertaining to watch them as they go about their business and to watch the little ones playing. So hopefully they will come back to where we can actually see them. At the moment they're just obscured by a bit of vegetation, which goes hand in hand with being in the Mulawati. There we go. Look at that. You can see they're pushing each other. Isn't that cute? And the little one is not backing down at all. It's much smaller than its sibling. I would say probably maybe even half the age, but it is not backing down at all. It's in fact being the feistier of the two. It's pushing and shoving and making sure that that other one has to think about what it's doing. This is cool. Elephants make me happy, I must be honest, especially when there's big herds like this. These singular best thing. Look at that one, how she just strips off that bark, those leaves. Now, interesting with that elephant, if you have a look on her left tusk there, you'll see that that left tusk is heavily notched. It's got a very big groove on it, and that's her feeding groove. That's the one that she's going to use to leverage leaves and all kinds of other things. But she's actually was using her right tusk, which is quite strange. Generally they favor one tusk and they'll use it more and more and more, and that's why it gets that groove in it. But for some reason she used her right tusk there just now. Maybe it was just the angle of the branch. It was easier with the right tusk than the left. But it's quite a nice example of just how much they use a certain side of their body and the damage that that can do to hard ivory that they have. I'm laughing to myself because just above me here, on the bank on our right hand side, so How is that? How amazing is that? Now you can hear, look, there's a ruckus in amongst the herd. I'm sure it's the males that are causing a bit of problems. And that's why, look, the females are more alert. Everyone is talking to each other. There's massive amounts of communication that are happening. That is the best sound. Seb, did you get goosebumps like I did?
I'm still getting.
Now I'm just keeping quiet because it's worth listening to.